Gentrification. My name is Dr. Dennis Corbin, and I'm the principal investigator on this project. I'd like to welcome you all. Again, this project is focused specifically with social work students because at some point we're all going to be practicing in the field, and we really want to focus on the policy side. Most of you all want to go into direct practice, but one of the things we want to emphasize is policy is equally important. So this is an opportunity that we're taking to make sure that you have a better sense of what policy is all about and how you can make just as much change as a policy practitioner as you will as a direct practitioner. This afternoon's discussion is focusing on homelessness and affordable housing. And one of the things that I wanted to do before we got started is kind of talk a little bit about the statistics as it relates to homelessness here in Cumberland County. And one of the things that I discovered, I went to the point in time, which is going to give us a quick snapshot of what it looks like as it relates to homelessness here in Cumberland County. But there is a caveat for this year. Because of COVID, the numbers are extremely low, but we also have to take into account that the reason those numbers are low in terms of people who are considered homeless or out of place in terms of housing is because COVID really required people to have places to go where they could be monitored and what have you. So I'm going to give you two sets of numbers. In 2021, the point in time contact is one snapshot of the homeless situation in Cumberland County. They choose a day, sometimes in January, where they go out and they just start to count as much in terms of who's considered homeless and who's not. And these are the numbers that I found on the website. In 2021, in terms of sheltered or unsheltered individuals, we had 54 people that were identified as unsheltered. We had 7 vets. We had 2 of those individuals who had mental health issues. We had 1 person that was identified with substance abuse issues, and we have 12 individuals who were homeless due to domestic violence situations. And that is in 2021. Now, let's go back 1 year, 2020. In 2020, Cumberland County had 165 unsheltered individuals. They had 99 vets who were considered homeless. They had 34 individuals who had mental health issues or who were identified with mental health issues. We had 15 individuals who were identified with substance abuse issues, and we had 23 individuals who were dealing with domestic violence situations. And this was in the year 2021. If I can go back 1 more year, and you'll see a significant change in terms of the numbers, in 2019, this is around the time the pandemic really started to take off, we had 226 individuals identified here in Cumberland County who were considered unsheltered. We had 116 veterans who were considered homeless or unsheltered. We had 82 individuals who dealt with mental health issues. We had 57 individuals with substance abuse issues, and we had 51 individuals with domestic violence issues. And in 2019, we had 8 individuals who were identified as HIV positive. When we look at these numbers and the trend, of course, as I mentioned earlier, because of the COVID situation, the numbers were low for last year, and we hope that they stay low. But of course, it was a snapshot in one point in time. We still have issues here in Cumberland County, and I think from what I've been following as it relates to how Cumberland County is dealing with homelessness and affordable housing, they are in the positive in terms of moving in a good direction. I know that they got a couple of initiatives that are coming online soon, but I wanted you all to hear from individuals who are working in the field, and for you all as future social workers, that you all will also experience individuals dealing with homelessness. And homelessness looks very different in a variety of ways, whether it's an individual, whether it's a family, whether it's a veteran, whether it's a domestic violence situation, whether it's an unemployment situation. There's a variety of factors that come into play. With that being said, we were fortunate to identify several individuals who has spent a lot of their time working in the field of homelessness and affordable housing. And they all come from different aspects, so they're going to provide different perspectives. as it relates. One of the things that we certainly want to make sure that we do is to draw the parallels between the policy side and the direct practice, because as social workers, we know policy impacts practice, and practice also impacts policy. So let's give a good listening to these individuals. I'm going to now ask our Associate Dean, Dr. Nichols, to come up and give us a welcome, which will be followed by Dr. Kennedy, our moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. I'm Dr. Quienton Nichols, Associate Dean to the School of Social Work here. And on behalf of Chancellor Darrell Allison, Provost Monica Leach, Dean Sharon Williams, and faculty, staff, and students in the School of Social Work, I would like to welcome you to Social Work Policy Practice, Homelessness, and Affordable Housing in Cumberland County panel discussion. Given the current situation in our world and the COVID restrictions that we've been experiencing, it is truly a pleasure to see you all in person and not be constrained by slow internet connectivity and distractions outside of the view of Zoom, Teams, and Google Meet, or the multitasking required while attending two meetings in the same space on the same computer terminal. Thank you all for investing your time with us today, and to our special panelists. We are extremely privileged to have them here, and it is truly an honor to see you in this place. Welcome to the beautiful campus of Fayetteville State University.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Dorrance Kennedy, and I will be serving as your moderator for this event. And once again, good afternoon and welcome to this event about social work policy related to affordable housing and homelessness in Cumberland County. So I feel that this is a very relevant and important topic because, as Dr. Corbin says, we know that policy affects practice. Can you say that with me? Policy. I don't feel any enthusiasm. Policy affects practice. Can we say it again? Policy affects practice. And what you'll find all over the country is that we have something going on called gentrification, in which we have people that are more affluent and have more money that are moving back into the cities and urban areas and replacing poor and working class people. That's happening even in Fayetteville, but especially in the larger cities. If you take a trip to, I've taken a trip to St. Louis and to Harlem and to Washington, D.C., and you will see this phenomenon happening. You'll see people out late at night walking their dogs in places where people were previously afraid to be out at certain times of night. So we have this phenomenon of gentrification going on all over the country. We also have raising prices in the renters market. So not only are people finding it difficult maybe to purchase a home, but also it's not necessarily affordable for some to rent housing as well. And so as we learn in our social work studies, with the Poor Law of 1601, trying to distinguish between the worthy and unworthy poor, who is worthy and unworthy of assistance. So when we talk about this problem, we have to consider our ecological perspective, how the individual and family fits in to the community and what is happening in the housing market, economics, job market, and all those kind of things. So even in Cumberland County and Fayetteville here, we've seen, for example, different ordinances against panhandling and giving money to those that are struggling. And so this should be a very relevant discussion. And so what we'll do at this time, we're going to give our panelists a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and their agencies. We're going to have a list of questions to ask our panelists, and then we will open it up to you, our audience, for any questions that you might have. So at this time, we'll start right here next to me. If you can introduce yourself and your agency.
Hi, my name is Stacey Buckner. I am the Executive Director of Offroad Outreach.
Tell us more about yourself.
Okay, thanks. So we have a homeless veterans outreach program. We also have a Veggies for Vets program and then an adventure therapy program. And all three of those programs are offered here in Cumberland County and the 4 surrounding counties. Thank you.
I'm Crystal. Is mine on? I'm Crystal DePietro. I'm the Executive Director with Connections of Cumberland County. We serve homeless women and children that are, or those that are at risk of homelessness and facing housing insecurity. Our role is to work with the women to break those patterns of instability and lead them to improving their overall situation to improve the lives of the children.
My name is Denise Giles, and I am the director over at Cumberland Interfaith Hospitality Network. Been there for 29 years. I'm a graduate of Fayetteville State, and I was homeless while I was attending here. Statistically, there's probably a cohort of mine in the room. So you never know who you're sitting with and who you're not, but I think my greatest education and connection was being homeless while I was here and being able to directly connect how do you take what your experience is and what policy allows you to do and create an opportunity. So our agency was the first agency to house families in Cumberland County. Cumberland County didn't have homeless families because we didn't count them. And just a quick comment on the point in time count. If you go back to 2015 and look up the data, you'll see that the reason the homeless family count has dropped is they changed the definition. That's what policy does. It can erase you. So that's just a tidbit to remember. We're here to make sure people don't get erased, but we actually provide shelter. We don't have to call somebody. We have housing. And so we really advocate in policy that people look at bringing a resource to the table and being able to, it doesn't do you any good to house if you don't have housing. We've effectively been serving over, I think we're up to 33,000 people in the 29. And so most of those folk were under the age of 10 years old. So this is something that people don't understand. Currently, Cumberland County looks at the school system as having over 500 students that would meet the criteria for their homeless definition, but not for the one that governs our housing programs.
Hey everyone, my name is Craig Morrison. I'm the Executive Director at Fayetteville Area, Operation Inasmuch. We're about 15 years old as an organization, and what we are is the churches, the collective churches in Fayetteville, their response to the homeless and hurting in our community. It began as a breakfast program, and we served breakfast Monday through Friday, and then it grew from there into case management and trying to help folks meet basic needs, get vital documents and things like that so they can get back on their feet. And then 4 years ago, we built the Lodge program, which is a 4-phase process to help men get out of homelessness, beginning with orientation, training and treatment, and then job training, and then stability and life on your own, kind of independent living. So that's what we do.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dtaylor. I'm the Director of Cumberland County Community Development Department, where Cumberland County was designated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as an entitlement jurisdiction, which basically means that our county receives entitlement funding through the agency to administer various programs that target low to moderate income residents in Cumberland County. Now, majority of our funding actually is more involved with the bricks and mortar side. We provide affordable housing through partnerships with our local developers or nonprofit developers, and we also provide direct assistance to homeless persons or those at risk through various programs such as homeless prevention, and also manage 2 programs that target those who are literally homeless, which we'll get into later as far as the differences with those terms. But we manage a transitional housing program that targets families with children, homeless families with children, and we also, in partnership with Family Promise, which is Denise, Giles there, we also serve as grantee over a program that targets homeless single adults who also have a mental illness and who also has a co-occurring disorder, substance use disorder, and so forth. So we've been managing those programs for, I would say, over 20 years, Safe Homes for over 10, I believe. And it's just a pleasure being here with you all to share our experience.
All right, we thank you so much for introducing yourself, this esteemed panel that we have. Once again, we'd like to thank Dr. Quienton Nichols, our Associate Dean, for being here, and the various social work professors, students, and community guests for being with us tonight. So this is a very important and cogent conversation. So before I begin with my questions, I want to start off with a story that I tell all my classes. And some of you that have taken my class before might remember this story. About 10 years ago, I was in the great city of Cary, North Carolina. And I was having a lunch with my wife and 2 children that were small at that time. And usually when I go out to eat, I will first order a sweet tea. Can you say sweet tea? Sweet tea, yes. And so I had my glass of sweet tea. Imagine this is the glass, and I stuck my straw in the liquid, and I began to sip the sweet tea. And as I began to sip the sweet tea, I felt something come up through the straw and strike me on the mouth. What was it, you might ask? It was a dead fly. This is a true story. 10 years ago, Cary, North Carolina, at the restaurant TGIF Friday. I have not been back there since that happened to me. So anyway, I called the waitress over, and she was very nonchalant about what had happened to me. I was not very excited about her response. And then I called over the manager, and they were very nonchalant about it. So they said, well, Mr. Kennedy, what we'll do for you, we will not charge you for your children's meal, and we'll give you a gift certificate for the next time you come visit. And so I didn't stop and tell them who I was, that I was an esteemed professor at the Fayetteville State University. I didn't tell them about how many degrees I had or who I was. But what was made real to me, that I tell all of our students, that status affects service. The status that people think that you have oftentimes will affect the service that you receive. And so I just want you to keep that in mind as we begin this discussion about homelessness and affordable housing. All right, now let us begin the questions to our panel. So I will ask the question, and anyone who feels led to respond to it can do so. Do you feel that there are certain segments of the homeless community that needs more attention than others? And are there special needs that we should focus on when dealing with the needs of this population?
Oh, yeah. I think, you hear numbers, and we hear about mental health, substance abuse, and a wide variety of contributory factors that aren't necessarily related to our pockets or our work or, assessing the ability to achieve income to sustain housing. What we don't have, unless they built one yesterday, is an inpatient treatment center that would be effective for people to get treatment. I didn't become homeless because my house burned down. I became homeless because I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And just quite frankly, I thank God that I got clean and sober when I did, because I don't think it would be possible now, especially since we've gone to medicinal management of drug addiction. So I have to deal with people that are coming in that are higher on their medication to not do drugs than they were when they were coming in with that, with their addiction. And so we don't really have the space and the place for that. When we are dealing with organic brain disease, people that are suffering from schizophrenia, dementia, we do not have a crisis unit that can meet their medical needs. We've walked away from mental health. It's now become some kind of choice and you're a consumer. The last time I checked, these are medical conditions that need to have a priority when we're looking at how do we help. If I have someone talking to the air that doesn't really know time, date, and place, it's very hard for me to contract with them on a lease for housing, just legally speaking. Very hard for them to live in a shelter, just saying cooperatively speaking, because of the nature of the disease that they're struggling with. We don't have the appropriate facilities, and it doesn't appear to me that the managed care organization that's responsible for that has any plans in the future to make that happen. However, I would challenge you to look, because this is a policy area. Money has, and what people put and attach to your money have a lot to do with what you do. When we grow up, we have a little bit of what we think we call freedom, but still we got to pay taxes. We still got to do, we have to be responsible. When an institution is receiving dollars, there's a contract that goes with it, and it's publicly available, like our managed care facility here. Alliance is the managed care facility here. You can go to the North Carolina Division of Health and Human Services website. You can pull their contract up. Tells you exactly what they're responsible for, and you can look exactly at the millions of dollars that are put into that entity, and then look at what their outcomes are. And look at who they feed first. And then if that's okay with you, fine. If you see that there's a flaw in that rationale, that we are getting a vacant area here with no services, and we really need some of those dollars to move in that area, this is where we can go in and impact policy. And policy is not necessarily sitting down and having a discussion. We can talk all day. That changes not policy. Words on paper change policy. So then you have to look at who needs to be in those conversations, and also be responsible to assure that your change doesn't destroy a whole nother, because sometimes we come in and I joke, and I'm not really even joking. I think I know everything. You can call my husband up, he'll verify it. You can ask half the people at this table, they'll verify it too. And it's hard to work with people who know everything, because we know everything. But what we don't know and can't know is what we know is going to impact our future or the future of others. So we have to have other people at the table. And so when we're looking at these gaps, these people aren't even at tables. Where if these are the folk that are showing up, where do we house them? Are we going to take the heroin junkie who's not required to get off of drugs to be in the housing and put him in the house next door to you? How do you feel about that? They're tearing down the neighborhoods where we used to put people, so they're going to have to move somewhere. If we're dealing with people that have been 4 years under a bridge struggling with serious mental health and trauma, and the first thing they're going to do is invite their friends, because of survivor's guilt. You take me away from the people I've been surviving with for 2 or 3 years under a bridge. I'm not going to say you can't come to my house. And this is who you have living next door now. See, we have to prepare people. Healing has to happen, and the potential and the right environment for people to move into has to happen. And to do that, there's a stage that we're missing here, that door.
Excellent. Would somebody else like to chime in?
Yes, I would. There is a lack of resources too, targeting those who are exiting correctional facilities. This is one of the areas where we seem to really have one of the biggest challenge. We already have a lack of affordable housing in our community, but then they have additional challenges because, first of all, when they're exiting out of a correctional facility, they have to find work. There's not going to be any landlords that's going to rent to you unless they know that you have stable income. Sometimes you have to make 3 times the amount of income, 3 times the amount of rent. And there, like Denise had mentioned earlier, there is that more people need to come to the table that provides these services. We don't have the housing, and then they also need wraparound services. They need that case management, that ongoing case management. It's not enough to just place them in housing and pay for a few months' rent or that temporary subsidy. But you got to remember, some of them may have been in prison for 20 years, or they need long-term case management. They need long-term counseling because they're still traumatized. And so that is one of the other areas that I want to mention that has been a challenge in our community, one of the greatest needs that we need to address.
And let me just ask a follow-up question. So is it still true that if someone is convicted of a felony that they can no longer live in public housing? Is that still accurate?
Well, we don't have any representative from the Housing Authority here, but what I can say is that based on my experience, we have several families that have exited our transitional housing and applied for public housing. And I will say that majority of them, if not all of them, were denied the first time for various reasons. Some have had, due to criminal, due to just payment that maybe they owed on a bill or what have you. Some things we're able to correct right away, but as far as criminal history, it is on a case-by-case basis. I would say appeal, and they would even encourage you to appeal. If you know someone who was denied public housing, what they'll need to do is appeal and have advocate also appeal on their behalf, an agency or someone just to advocate on their behalf that can speak on their behalf. So it is on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me go to the next question. Are there policies here in the local community that you feel impact your work with this population the most? Any local policies that you could point out?
I'll start. So for my agency, working with women and children, those at risk, we have a lot of at-risk clients. And so defining that is someone who their income is too low to maintain their housing, they face eviction or utility disconnect ongoing multiple times throughout the year, and so they're constantly seeking services within our community, and so we work to try to navigate that. When we are talking about policies and clients trying to find those resources, we often have to go back to the HUD definitions, and we have to look at the requirements. In order for our community to receive HUD funding, we have to have certain programs in place, and when those programs aren't running up to full capacity, it impacts the work that we're doing because we can't get those services to the clients, or the clients aren't making it to our door.
Excellent, excellent. Anybody else, local policies that you found that impact the work with this population?
Well, more the lack of than the policy piece. We've been trying to, for 20-some years, any dollars that come down through HUD, CBDG, home, that are building affordable housing, that are building shelters, building anything, touching anything related to low-income housing all the way down to homeless. A 5% set aside in development should be protected for the homeless population to be able to enter into. As long as they're involved with an agency, he's going to stick with them. We can stay with them while they're there. You know, our county and city spend money on public housing. And I don't get paid by any of those folks, so I can tell you quite frankly, their director says, "Oh, hell no, those people will not be here." And that's actually audioed in a meeting. So I'm not making something up. You know, when you're ignorant enough to let something fall out your mouth like that, I think you need to be accountable to it. So public housing is actually the destination for many folk whose income is permanently limited. Yet those people, I hate using that word, but the people that are in that category are the people that might be screened out due to misunderstandings, misconceptions, and just flat out racism and prejudice. That's not saying any individual is that way. People have power when they're interviewing, and you need to be very aware of what your preconceived notions are when you come to the table to work, because many of us have them. And you have to work more intensely to assure that you are not crossing that line. You know, you have to advocate more and hopefully walk along with so that you learn more about who your neighbor is. But I think that, you know, the fact that we have our tax dollars that either came back from Washington or coming out of the local pots being invested in these groups, we've got a right to say, hey, you know, 5%, and then we'll have, you know, how we'll manage that. But we also have to assure that, again, coming to the landlord who says, I just don't want to have 5% of my property absolutely destroyed. Well, wealthy children destroy things. You know, it ain't just some of us who may not be so, you know, I destroy things. I don't mean to, I'm just destroy things. However, I bought my house, so I have to fix what I destroy. And that'll teach you a lot. But I think that's, you know, looking at what is not here, you know, and requiring where our money goes to be open doors for the folks that they are actually here to serve anyway.
You have a comment?
Yes, I would like to just piggyback on what Denise mentioned, and she's right. Local developers, as well as the county and city, especially the community development departments that manage the community development block grant and the home investment partnership program funds that are invested in our community to build affordable housing. We do have to strategize and see how we can build units, not just targeting low to moderate income, but also designating a portion of those units that target those who are experiencing homelessness. Now, we do have our request for proposal out, and it does provide some incentives. They do get additional points if the developer can. The more units they target for that population, the more points they get. And that's the incentive that Cumberland County Community Development provides to the local developers. The challenge that some of the developers have brought up, of course, you know, they are in, especially if they are for-profit, it doesn't help with their, with maintaining, you know, certain capital or their cash flow. It's difficult targeting those with extremely low income, so they're not bringing in that revenue that they would like to see. So that is one of the, I guess, the challenges. So we try to provide some incentives in investing our funding so that it can, you know, balance off or offset some of those costs, those expensive costs, the expensive cost to construct affordable housing. I did want to add too, she mentioned about the lack of policy. One of the things I've noticed, especially post or during this COVID pandemic, you have, like you mentioned, rising rent increases. And we have no rent control. And of course, it's sort of a taboo word when you mention that, you're gonna have, especially in a community like ours where we are a unique community that caters to the military. And my husband is retired Army, so it's nothing against that, but just the fact that we see many property owners, landlords who, this is who they target. Not saying that they don't care. You do have some out there that care about the homeless, but they also bring up the fact that they have bills too. And so this is where some additional policies set in place or incentives to provide to our local developers or our property management companies, landlords, to help them in helping us serve our homeless community.
Yes, that's a great point. I think incentives are very important because, like they used to talk about in the 60s, urban renewal can mean poor removal.
Right.
So it's very good, it's very important that there is incentives for developers and business people in this area. Let me go to Craig Morrison, Operation Inasmuch. I know you do a lot of work with the faith and church community. What is the greatest challenges that you've encountered in your work? And if you could rule the world, what were 2 key changes that you would make in working with this population?
Wow. Some of the key challenges that we face have been mentioned by several of my colleagues with the funding and the low-income housing and not being there. Like, I have several folks that we have in our lodge facility and in our Frank Street houses who have HUD-approved vouchers. They have them. They've been approved, but they can't find a house in Fayetteville to actually move into. So they're still in our facility and still, waiting one day at a time, being patient. Number 2 is, especially since COVID, a lot of the folks who come to breakfast, we serve over 80 folks on a given day, over 15,000 meals last year. But the vital records, what used to just happen in a couple of days, okay, let's get your birth certificate, let's get your social security card, let's get your driver's license, now takes months, because you have to have 2 vital documents in order to get a driver's license. Well, guess what? You can't get a job unless you have a driver's license. I mean, so you see how it starts stacking up against really, really quickly against the people we're trying to help. And they are working really, really hard, but it's like everything is pushed against them. So that's a biggie. That's a biggie that we face every single day. I would say in addition to that, if you just kind of look at the homeless population, there's really 3 categories in my mind. There's like the first 10% that are just like couch surfing or staying in their car. Just they have one bump in the road and they're homeless, but 3 months they'll be back on their feet. But then there's just like 80%. That's who we're really trying to help. That 80% who has 3 or 4 life barriers, and it's usually not mental illness, but it can be substance abuse, legal, relational, job loss, several things, health concerns could be in that 80%. But then that chronic homeless, we have the chronic homeless that come to Inasmuch too, who have the substance abuse and the mental illness that we really struggle to serve. But I would say if I had a dream, if I could rule the world, there's an organization both in Austin, Texas, and now a community in Wilmington, North Carolina, who are trying a model called Community First, because they understand that the loss of community, the loss of family, the loss of that wraparound support that we're trying to pay people to create is really the foundational thing that people need more than just a roof over their head or a paycheck in their pocket. They really need that whole community, that holistic approach. And so how do you create a whole village? How do you create a whole neighborhood? I would love to see basically from Cumberland Road to Moore Street and Hillsborough and Frank and Orange, I would love to see that whole area become a community first neighborhood. But guess what? There's zoning laws that will really never let that happen because there's several pieces of property that we own, but we can't build anything on them because we don't have a clear title. And so we've got to wait and wait and wait, just like everybody else. So that would be my initial answer to your question, sir.
Great response. Stacey Buckner, the same question. In a make-believe world, if you could change a couple things related to working with this population, what would you do?
Well, just to touch on what Craig said, with the getting a photo ID, like I can't tell you guys how many times I have had a client, they could qualify for services, they just need an ID, but you need a birth certificate to get an ID. Oh, but guess what? In order to get an ID, you need a birth certificate. So there's that catch-22. And so changing policy at the federal and state levels, like, yes, we want to ensure our safeguarding our security, absolutely, but we don't want to create unreasonable barriers that are going to prevent our community from receiving those services. And then the other thing that I think, Dr. Kennedy, is with the dishonorable discharge status of veterans. We work with the veteran community, and service members with other than honorable discharges, they receive 0 benefits, okay? Now, we are talking about combat veterans that maybe developed these mental issues and other, other things that are deterring them or keeping them from becoming stable, and they develop that while they're in service. But we're saying it was pre-service. It's a personality thing, and you just can't follow the rules and that sort of thing. And I think affecting policy where there's not a uniform standard for an other than honorable discharge either. It's really up to that commander to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to hand you, and we need to change that. We need to change that. There needs to be a standard issue across the board for that. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point, dishonorable discharge. I hadn't thought about that. Now, as everybody knows, I'm from New Orleans. Can everybody, tomorrow's Mardi Gras. Can everybody say Happy Mardi Gras?
Hey,
Happy Mardi Gras. But listen, I have not done as much work with this population as you have, but I've done a little work, and in the past, there were homeless individuals that I was trying to help, and maybe they were without housing, and they would spend the night down at the Greyhound bus station. They would go to the Amtrak station. They would spend the night sitting in the ER. But where does the whole law enforcement piece come in now? Because it seems like now, if you try to sit at the bus station in the ER, security, city police is going to ask you, what are you doing here? You've been here for a while. You have to go. How does the law enforcement piece play into this from your perspective?
Well, currently, the city of Fayetteville have designated officers. They serve as the homeless liaison that actually, while they are out in the street, they, if they identify anyone who is experiencing homelessness, they will connect them to, I guess what we have in our community, a community-wide coordinated entry referral system, which then would connect them to, or they have been dropping them off at the local shelter, like the Salvation Army shelter, and that's currently what is happening now. They connect them to the shelter or to other services that are available in our community.
And as people are trying to not be in those spaces, because some people don't find having any encounter with the city police a positive experience,
Right.
they move themselves into the wood line, and then a community develops. And I'm sure you've seen a few. And they are unattractive, and they're scary, and they're all of that, from the outside looking in. Even if you're on the inside, can be kind of scary. You never know what a situation is for any person that's in that camped out experience. And we did have some organizations that were giving out tents, and that was highly frowned upon, because then it kind of said, well, we're creating permanency in the wood line. But I think the sad thing that I've seen, and I understand the need to clean up things, but to watch people come in with shovels and tear everything they own and pack it while they stand there and can do nothing, helpless. Irregardless of what your status is, why you are where you are a human being, and there's a level of dignity and respect that should be given to what you have. And if we can't find those solutions, and we have to continue doing that, the anger that is developing and reciprocity that's going to come. And if I can't go somewhere, if I can't go to the bathroom, if I can't sit down, I sat down on a bench in Raleigh for 3 days and slept because I wanted them to arrest me. Now, I come from a time of, I tried not to get arrested for a lot of things I was doing, and now here I am on a bench trying to be arrested. It didn't happen. But the girl that was with me, she was African American, she got arrested the first day. So,
Wow.
you know, just looking at things and seeing how privilege and power, but what I saw were white people, African American people, and 2 Hispanic people standing and had no privilege, no power, and no voice. And people were driving by as if it were nothing happening. And I just say that if you see something like that, take a moment and see what you're seeing. And look for what is happening to the human that is standing there.
Yes, that's such a great comment, because me being from New Orleans, the first African-American mayor in New Orleans was named Ernest N. Morial. His son, Mark Morial, today is the head of the Urban League. But anyway, we have a convention center in New Orleans, which is like 4 or 5 football fields long, the biggest convention center in the country. And there was a time we had a lot of conventions going on down there where city officials would go downtown and give one-way bus tickets to people that were homeless, because it's like we got a big event going on, we got important people that are coming. You all need to get out of town for a while because you're an eyesore and you're going to mess up the image of our city. So a lot of times it just seems like we treat the homeless almost like they're invisible. People don't say good morning to them. They just walk by them almost like they're part of the untouchable caste in India. Professor DePietro, let me ask you a question. So how much time in your work do you spend between advocating for change in policy and actually direct practice working with individuals and families?
So for my role, I spend a lot of time in policy and practice. For my agency, we are direct service all day long, working with those clients, trying to help them navigate these systems and find ways to have safe housing or to prevent that homeless act that's about to occur. And so for me, as our agency is working with clients, my role and my goal for the agency is to identify what are those barriers. And I listened to all the panelists talking about the different barriers that they mentioned, even all the way down to, for us, if I needed my birth certificate, I'd just go pay the $25 and get my birth certificate. But for our clients, they don't have that $25 to get that birth certificate. So when I am looking at the situations that are coming in, I'm also looking at those policies. So for me, it's a balancing act between the two, but the agency as a whole is focused on that direct service with clients.
Now, DTaylor, so what would be some of your ideas or options to create more affordable housing in this area?
Well, I think first, and as I mentioned earlier, of course, from our end, providing incentives to our partners, the developers, to build more affordable housing. But also, we first need to understand who, among the homeless population, which subpopulation are in need of the affordable housing units the most. When you have limited amount of resources, then you got to start thinking about prioritizing who needs it the most. Is it the single adults? Is it those who are fleeing from domestic violence? Is it those exiting out of correctional facilities? So we have to strategize, and like I said, create more incentives, working with our partners to develop those units for that subpopulation. That's one idea, and also just advocate to bring more resources in our community. Our jurisdictions, as I mentioned before, we receive funding from HUD, but it's never enough to meet the demand. I'm grateful, but it's never enough to meet the high demand in our community. And this is universal, it's nationwide. It's not just affecting our community, but it's never enough resources, funding resources, especially to go towards the bricks and mortar.
Yes, I read somebody that said one time that budgets are moral documents. So the budget of a town, a city, a state, or a country says a lot about the priorities of that community. Now, in a couple minutes, I want to give you a chance to chime in. Hopefully you have some questions. So now, since we're going to bring the audience in just a second, would anybody on the panel have advice to these future social workers and activists who want to change policy in this area? What would you advise our students?
Well, I will jump in because I didn't know there was a choice. Dr. Chavis, who I was under here, I thought she just hated me. I even thought maybe because I was white. I didn't know. I was trying to figure out what is the problem here. I didn't understand motivation because I can't do that. I can't do that. And she said, yes, you can. How do you know you can't do that? Kind of like working with a client. He said, the man's out to get me. I'm like, well, we need to go find him. So you go apply at Taco Bell. And if he don't hire you, we're going to go jack him up. You know, he came back with his Taco Bell shirt on. I came back with a change after testifying before Congress. The Hearth Act that was passed, the one that changed the definition, changed how we do business, kind of shifted our role from homelessness to now providing everything that everybody medically, mentally, and addiction-wise, that these are already funded entities, needed. So it all got lumped on us. There was one key word that was not mentioned in 886 pages of documentation that was submitted. Families. I kept reading through it, and I said, I don't think families are included in this legislation, and they weren't. This was how we wrote out families, because the numbers were so great, and you got to figure, we can blame and shame individuals. The old man around the barrel with a bottle of wine, we drive by, we shame and blame him. It became a moral ability for us to walk away because of our judgment. He caused this situation. How do you blame a 5-year-old child? You know, so it created a dilemma in the system, and it was embarrassing. This is my, Denise Giles' interpretation of everything. Because you gotta remember, I know everything. So what I did is I took the pages up and I met with, he was Congressman Burr at the time. He was a Republican. Someone shared with me I needed to listen to Rush Limbaugh for about 2 weeks, 15 minutes a day to be able to go in there. And they were so right, because if you don't speak a language, you need to desensitize your reaction to it to have a conversation. It was the most wise advice, and if you're a Republican, you know, oh well. But I'm just telling you my experience, my
Be gentle,
experience.
be gentle, be gentle.
Yeah, I'm just giving you my experience. I'm not trying to blame anybody else for their experience. But he sat and he listened, and the first thing that he was shocked by was that word was not present. And they were getting ready to vote. 2 days later, he asked me to stay in Washington, and I had to go before a committee, which I thought when you testify before a committee, it was like you just go tell your, what your problem is. This is like being on trial, and that's what I said. I'm feeling like y'all are after me, man. I was not happy with it because I felt very alone until Congressman Burr stood up and he began to speak, and he had that ability. It took me to walk it in with 2 other people, one from Fayetteville and one from Raleigh. 3 people. All of us had been formerly homeless. All of us worked with agencies. All of us thought we couldn't do it. Certainly I can't do it. But it got changed, and that was inserted. It was approved, and it was voted on. They didn't have to bring it back into Senate to review it. So it was an incredible thing. You can do this. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. You just have to do the work and make no assumptions. Don't assume you know what that word homeless means. Because half of the people you think are homeless don't meet the criteria. So if you don't like that criteria, how do we change that? How do we become, find out what it is. If you think elder folk shouldn't have to be institutionalized in their last days and should be allowed to be home, and the resources that you'd spend in an institution ought to be there in their home, wraparound services. I mean, let's think about what it is you're going towards. Every day you're working, you're fighting, and if you're fighting a rule, it's pen and paper. It's a whole lot easier than fighting someone's moral, personal perspective. That's difficult to change, but a line on a page can be changed with an ink pen. You just got to be able to get the ink, get the writer, and get the people to support it. So don't let anything stop you other than you being driven by your own ideology that you know everything, because you're just going to mess things up. Be inclusive.
But you know everything.
I know everything.
Yes, now are there any questions? If someone has a question, if you can just approach one of the mics. We want you to be able to speak to the panelists about your future and your interest in this topic. Go ahead.
All right. I had a question. All right. So we all know the eviction moratorium and how that happened. My question, well, I'd like to speak on it a little more. So at the end of the moratorium, there were a lot of people that evicted their tenants, and they raised the prices of the units they had. And then the people that had much smaller, like they had their individual houses and stuff, unlike the bigger places just raise it, they ended up putting these houses on the market, and we already know about the seller market right now and all that stuff. My question is, do you believe that the eviction moratorium benefited people or hurt people?
So because I am, the population we work with sees this on a regular basis, and we worked with the city through the CARES Act funds as well as the ERAP funds, the emergency funds that were just done. I would have to say that I think that the policies that came behind that moratorium were not set appropriately. I think that if you tell me I don't have to pay my bills today, I'm going to go spend my money elsewhere because I don't have to pay my bills today. But the words behind it that we constantly were trying to educate our clients is that bill is going to come due one day. And so I think that they pushed it out, and it began to hurt our clients, which then began to frustrate the landlords. And we work closely with landlords as well. We make contact with every landlord that we work with. And I think that the moratorium was a hindrance and caused a bigger increase and a wider group of people that are now going to face homelessness when they no longer have somebody else a couch to sleep on, because we don't have enough housing to put them in.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Burks, and I know, Ms. Giles, you had said when you were speaking to us about definitions and how policy can change definitions. From each panelist scope of practice, can you define to us what homelessness is from your scope of practice?
For those of us who receive HUD money, essentially, if you are homeless if you are literally out on the street in a situation that is not fit for human habitation. Now that doesn't mean that, you called the health department and they said you need repairs. We're talking about dilapidated buildings. And if you're in a motel or a hotel that's being paid for by an agency, now you need to hear that, because we have, y'all ever seen the Tropical out on the boulevard?
Yes.
Well, you need to go thank those people, because they house a lot of folk. It's an awful place, but their door is open. And what we've got going on is moms and dads and single people working day labor or working tip jobs, and they're paying their room daily or barely weekly. They never have enough to get out. They have to stay. And guess what? They're not homeless. And if you're a mom or a dad and you got 4 kids and you're sleeping on some man's couch that you don't know, you're not homeless either,
According to HUD.
according to HUD.
Okay.
Right.
Now, the McKinney-Vento definition that HUD modified in that HERF Act I was telling you about actually has a whole nother piece that's through the Department of Education. And that's where I'm telling you, when you hear numbers like 500 to 800 children meet the definition, their definition is essentially if you don't have a home, you're homeless.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, it's kind of common sense stuff. Yeah, for youth. So you're going to always see a difference. And so why is that divided? And how do we have that conversation to bring it back?
And in addition to that, some folks have gotten away from using the word homeless
So,
to just say unsheltered. So then that way they can
Or
even.
unhoused.
Or unhoused. So that way it just lowers that number even more, but it's not true.
exactly, good point.
And I can't tell you how frustrating it is for us providers when we have to explain that to someone who calls with the expectation that we have housing available for them, because in their mind, they are homeless. If they don't have their own place, for instance, if they've been paying for their own hotel, but they ran out of money, they're not gonna be able to pay for it tonight. Oh, but you paid for your own hotel.
Last night.
Exactly, and now, but we cannot admit you into our program because it had to have been paid for by a charitable organization in order for you to be considered literally homeless. That is very frustrating. Now, of course, there have been workarounds with that, with some of the providers, and reaching out to some organizations to help the family, resolve that.
Ambiguity.
Yes.
Ambiguity in legislation is always helpful.
But it is very frustrating for us providers when we have to explain that to someone.
I'd like to add to that, your question being, as providers, what do we recognize as homelessness? And for Connections, we don't receive HUD funding. We do receive the city development or the community development block grant to assist city residents with eviction prevention. But so all of our funding comes from grants, different types of grants and donations. So we get to have a little bit of a leeway in how we support our clients, but we still work to try to meet our community where it's at. And so we're not going to go too far outside of the HUD definition because we try to keep that structure across the board. But we do have that ability to say for the family, the mom that is caught up in that, what we call the hotel cycle, once you're in it, it's almost impossible to come out of it. And so to us, even though you're paying it, you're homeless. And so we're gonna work with you to try to get you out of that situation. And because of the funding that we receive, we get to define homelessness a little bit different. And then we also, I have to remind myself and everyone here the fact that not everybody that doesn't have a house considers themselves homeless. They want to be there. And just, we have this grand idea that if we have enough houses, we'll have everybody off the streets, and that's not going to happen because homelessness is sometimes the way someone are unsheltered or they want to live in the tent and they're not comfortable with the constraints that come along with having to pay your bills every month. And so they choose that path. And so for us, we get to the opportunity to define that homelessness a little different.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
I had 2 questions for either Stacey Buckner or Craig Morrison. So now, I used to be a school social worker in the city of St. Louis, and under the McKinney Act, I believe the school system provided transportation to homeless children. So the school system would send a cab to the shelter, and then when the school day was over, that cab would come and take the child back to the shelter. Now, I know that Cumberland County and Fayetteville is a lot smaller than St. Louis, but do you know of any services, like how does homelessness affect children and their attendance and truancy and all those kind of things?
Well, I personally wouldn't be able to answer that question, sir, because I work with the veteran population. We don't work with the youth population. So, Craig?
Yeah, we don't necessarily work with the youth population either, but we did have an 18-year-old who was basically, as soon as he turned 18, his foster parents dropped him off on the side of the street, and he's still in high school, right? And it's the middle of COVID. So he's still a teenager, he's still a kid, and it was COVID, so we didn't have the transportation issue, but we just had to do the whole virtual, had to set him up a classroom and get him going. And I tell you, his counselors were amazing. The work with him, and there was another organization, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but they were amazing to work with him and to try to get him into all the needs that he was going on. Communicare. There you go. And then he wanted to go in the military, so he was able to transition straight out of high school, graduate from Terry Sanford, and then he was able to go into the military, and now he's serving our country. So there are success stories that have happened, even though COVID and the pandemic, you don't hear about those. But I do know that transportation is provided in Cumberland County.
19 years ago, it wasn't when the legislation was put in place. And so I was a lot younger and even more horrible to hear in public than I am now. And I just simply walked into the office, the admin office out on 301, and said, you know, y'all are in violation of federal law, and we're going to bring a class action suit against you. And they went, what? And I said, yeah, I'm not playing. I don't have time to play with you. You know, I mean, I got all these people, and I got all these children, and I can't keep driving them to school.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't have the budget for it.
And speaking about transportation too,
Exactly.
a lot of folks don't know that all the city buses are free right now for everybody
Yeah.
because of the CARES Act. And so
Exactly.
that's really been a benefit to our homeless community
Absolutely.
because they can get from here to there in point A, and it's been
And I wanted
really
to make
helpful.
sure that they carried it all the way out because there's more included in that act. And that is access to books, tutors, and special needs that may be around trauma and homelessness and isolation. And so what wound up happening after they got over my threats and I got over my need to threat, a conversation was able to happen. And they put a team of people together, and we were the first in North Carolina, this county, to have a homeless liaison, to get the homeless education grant through the state of North Carolina, and to implement that transportation plan and and it's been a work in process because, you know, you find out everything sounds good until you do it. And then that experience lets you know how you don't want to do it, and that's the best way to learn because you'll never forget it. And then you get to go, and I think we've got a really good situation. Our liaison, the school is very supportive and very connected. They'll call us directly. You know, we've got this family. We know you can't take them under the HUD thing. Do you have something else? And as she said, you know, we house about 118 people, children and families that are outside of any funding that we get from HUD. On top of that, because the need is there, and we too have partnerships with the faith community. And so getting out there and finding those opportunities, but if it were not for that assurance that transportation is there for that child, that would have put us out of the market of being able to do this.
Right.
Now, I just have one more question for Professor DePietro, and then we're going to bring up Dr. Corbin to wrap it up. So on a personal level, even though I know this is talking about policy practice, on a personal level, what can we do if we're concerned about folks that are struggling with housing issues on a personal level?
One, know your resources. As social workers, definitely, or anyone working in the human service, know the resources in our community or in the community that you're in, and help guide them there. If they don't come in, they're not going to get the services. So, you know, if it's a man, send them to Operation Inasmuch or Fayetteville Ministries. If it's a female or a woman with children, send them to Connections. Veterans, send them to Stacey.
Shame on you, Crystal.
I know, it's horrible. But again, on a personal level, if you have someone that you think is struggling, provide them the resource. Give them the opportunity to make that step. If I've never been shown any different, how do I know to change? And so they may not realize that they're in that situation. And if you're the outsider looking in, you can help guide them to better their situation.
Is
I'm
it quick?
sorry.
Is it quick?
Yeah, literally. I know there's 211, but we're not really using that right now. Coordinated entries number, I have it in my work phone, but I don't know what it is. Is it okay for people to know it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That is 910-479-4663, or home. The last four is home. It's on the, you can also find it, I'll repeat it, it's area code 910-479-4663. And you can also find it on the local continuum of care website at www.fcccoc.org. Make sure I got all the C's in
Fayetteville,
there.
Cumberland County.
If I could
Yeah.
just make a quick statement about some advice that I would like to give these students. Don't be afraid to cut through that red tape. That's one of the things that I really pride myself in, is not being afraid to hurt people's feelings. And I want to say, when it comes to your place in society, you can be a powerful educator and advocate, okay? You can use your skills to combat resistance and garner support for needed resources, and you can be a transformational leader in the community. And you just need to be cognizant of the challenges that people experiencing homelessness face, while recognizing their resilience, okay? Recognize that them panhandling or sleeping on a bench, it's a way of survival, so we need to decriminalize that, okay? And some people in the community who see homelessness as a threat to their business or neighborhood or community, they often seek social work as for those services, right? However, services created to address a perceived threat often reflect a social control approach to service delivery, and rather than an approach of empowerment. And that's what we want to do. So remember that. You want to empower people. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. One last question from the audience. Go ahead.
So my name is Sarah. I'm an MSW student here at Fayetteville State. I also run an organization called Project Hope. Stacey actually helped my husband and I kind of start this organization in December of 2020. We do some similar things that Stacey does, not to the extent, but we provide some essentials to the homeless community. What are some short-term solutions or short-term things that you feel like we can do to help this population? Obviously, we have long-term goals of, finding housing for this population, but what are some things that we can do now?
Advocate at the 24-hour laundromats. They have cards now that laundry can be done with, to get those as something to distribute. So there's two folds to that. I can come in and be warm or cool, have access to a television, just something while my clothes are being washed and not be run out. That resource is there. How much is it to do a load of laundry? These cards are reloadable. And then give yourself the opportunity, if they want to reload, they need to come back. And then there's that opportunity to, look at that next need. But, we don't have a lot of people that are walking around naked, but we have a lot of people walking around with dirty clothes. And then access, for me being homeless, to take a shower in the Krispy Kreme Donuts bathroom. It used to be outside the building. And to walk out and have people look at me, it was obvious. And I had a 6-month-old baby with me, that I had just used that bathroom. It was, after a while, you don't even feel that anymore from people. We need to have some space where, we have churches, gyms. We don't have to go build anything. I mean, my God, I don't want to shame and blame people. What did Jesus tell you to do? Like, that man can't take a shower in your shower? I mean, really, just seeing about having that conversation, you would be better, because I can tell that you have that tone that's going to, smooth walk in. I'm going to shut the doors. But, just looking at the basic needs, again, increase my capability of feeling dignified. I don't know if you've ever been camping and you go a week or two without a shower. That's camping. This is life. So, I mean, that's food is not really the huge piece. because we've got a lot of food, and we've got a lot of people that are out touching folk, but connecting them back in to be legitimately in that laundromat, or legitimately at that church for that period of time, you know. Or do like she does, she carries a portable shower around and just, here, have one. I love that. I looked that up, I said, man, that's so cool.
Well, thank you so much, Denise. And thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. One of the reasons why I think our programs work is because we are mobile. We get rid of that structural barrier of transportation. And also with our veteran community, we have a Jeep, okay? It's outfitted with a hot shower, and it's got an awning and also a full kitchen in the back. And so
It's
they
amazing. You need to check it out.
they recognize that vehicle as something that they had in the military. They automatically, so that level of trust is almost automatically built, you know? And I think being mobile is so important to deliver mainstream services. And my hope is that, and I think I've talked to you and Zach about this, is to get an RV that is a one-stop intake center that could provide basic needs stuff, but also stop that waiting period of, 3 days for an intake or something. We can get you those services right then, instantly, and start progress and show the impact to you immediately, because, how many times have you been out, Sarah, and haven't been able to find that person? You want to move on to the next level.
Lord,
Yeah.
all the time.
So,
I think too, when you're going out, one, having those conversations, asking, what is it that they need? I mean, we can talk all day long about what we think they need, but just having that conversation and advocating for what it is that they are presenting, but also again, going back to having those resources, even though some people want to get rid of our structures, we're still there. And, as a day resource center, we're a walk-in basis, and we're that one-stop shop for the women that come in. And so knowing those resources and having those available so that when you're out there, you're not just providing concierge services of giving items, you're actually leading them to a path that may improve their situation.
The one thing I would add to it, is that it's not just a resource problem, it's really a relationship problem. And so I think one thing that does a little bit of damage is when the folks just come in and they just, here you go, take it, leave it, da-da-da-da. And it's not the consistent, let me get to know your name, let me hear your story, and there's some continuation of the story. And that's where the peer support specialist, the wraparound services, the case managers, social workers are all hugely needed, because you're walking with people as they're trying to get out of the situation, and empowering, such a key thing.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Hasn't this been a great conversation? Yes. And I just would also add to that about empowerment and relationships, and there's always a need for personal hygiene products. Underwear, toothbrushes, and all that kind of stuff. But at this time, can you give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you so much. At this time, we'll turn it back over to Dr. Corbin.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Again, let's give another round of applause for our panelists. Hopefully you all took away from this presentation, like I did, I was making connections in terms of the work that we talked to you all about as social workers. There's a lot of social work going on here, from the policy side down to the practice, and some innovative stuff. I was telling Dr. Kennedy it would be interesting to have our students take a shower in one of those mobile things so they can get the feeling to see what it's all about.
Well, it's outside if you guys want to take a look at it.
Okay, we did have some gift bags here on the chair. Please feel free to take those. That's just a little something from us to thank you all for coming. We do want to thank our AV person, Mr. Nation, for the wonderful lighting and the speakers and all that good stuff. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the funders of this project, which is the New York Community Trust and the Council on Social Work Education. And with that being said, we have some box lunches in the back. We have turkey, vegetarians, the small stack, and then we have ham, which is the semi-small stack. please feel free to take one. I know you all have class coming up in about 10, 15 minutes. And again, I want to personally thank each one of you all for being here, and I'm quite sure we'll have you all back. And hopefully we've inspired a lot of our future social workers here to go into the home, working with the homeless population.
Amen.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you
guys.
all.
Thank you, friends.